Hey, welcome everybody. It's exactly 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, and so on. Hope everybody's having a great day. Looking forward to a great presentation, and been working with Dale for quite a while now, so I know it's going to be great. Just want to welcome everybody to the call. Thank you for taking the time and investing in us today. I think you're going to find this extremely valuable as we talk about the CSMD as well as taxonomy. So with that, just want to go over a few housekeeping items. We want to make sure that everybody understands they're going to be muted for the duration of this call. What I'd like you to do is please ask questions as soon as they come up. Put those questions in the Q&A box up to your top right there. That's going to be where we're going to collect those questions. That's where we're going to be asking Dale to pause and answer some questions, etc. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over. Go ahead and introduce Dale. So Dale, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Uh, There you go. So a quick introduction to Dale. Dale has quite a bit of experience in the ITSM, CMDB, and DevOps space. He's actually our practice manager, our top SME in that space. He is a champion for extending the IT value chain through the use uh, of services and ServiceNow solutions to provide strong linkage to those business outcomes. He is excited to talk to you today. His career has taken him throughout many areas of IT, not just in software and services, but also through architecture and other products, so including network engineering, etc. With that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Dale. Dale, if you want to go ahead and take it from here.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Thanks, Rick. Just quickly to go over the the agenda here. We're going to, just do some level setting here on the front end, talk a little bit about why services are important, talk about, again, level setting on CSDM. What is it, right? Just high level. And then we're going to dig into the service taxonomy and talk about some guiding principles, take you through a little bit of guidance, right, and kind of practical knowledge on modeling your data. I'm going to show you an example of the common service data model and the service taxonomy in action. And we're going to finish off with, some talk and some discussion around what does this mean from your process and governance, and then some keys to success. So before we get started with that, we would love to do a quick poll question here. So I think we're gonna start the poll question. If you can, just help us understand what your primary driver is for services and the common service data model, right? So we have, kind of a lot of different choices here. So anything from, nirvana of running IT like a business and a service-oriented operating model. A lot of organizations are moving in that direction. Digital transformation is obviously driving a lot of this change, and being able to provide services at speed is important. And just having a portfolio of what, and organizing what IT does, right? Providing the showback and consumption-based costs, right, is another key driver in this space. And understanding, just having visibility of those business critical services to support operational efficiencies. And some of you might be here just to kind of learn about what CSDM is all about, what service taxonomy is all about, what does it mean to me, where can I start thinking about kind of moving down that path, right?
So we should
So
have our poll results done. If we can check in there to see if we've got those results.
oh,
There we go.
there we go. So it looks like the winner here is the impact visibility uh, number, the fifth one down here, impact visibility of business critical services, followed by, just having a portfolio of services and organizing what IT does. That's important. And, I'm sorry, a bunch of you, 23%, right? Heard about the CSDM, just want to understand, what it means and kind of explore what we're doing going forward. So good. We're going to cover all these things. I think we're going to have something in store here for everyone. So let's get into it. Okay, so why services, right? And by the way, if you have questions as we're going along here, please submit your questions. We've got folks kind of monitoring that, and we will get to those questions. There is a Q&A at the back end of this. So what is it really? So really, the services are really important if you're interested in connecting IT with business, right? IT has, kind of suffered for a long time as being, kind of technology focused and moving into more of a service value stream position, right, where we can have better, kind of visibility and better understanding of how we interact with the business and show that value and think about it across that value stream, which is, how are my people responding? How are my people thinking about services, what they deliver? What are the processes to make that happen, and the technology, obviously, and really the service becomes the conduit that provides this value stream, right? So um, by IT providing services to the business and business understanding that value, we're really by extension creating value back to our clients, right? So that's really what the services are all about. And where do we get the value, right? So, when we understand our services and we understand what makes up our services, and we've got good accountabilities, and we understand what outcomes can be expected from these services, we're going to get that visibility, and there's going to be greater understanding of what the value proposition is. Understanding and identifying those insights, right, from the operational activities is also important, right? So if I can visualize how my incident, problems, changes, requests, and all these IT components, how they contribute to a service, is really important for that, kind of operational efficiency. Prioritizing critical events, right? Again, based on service context becomes a really great opportunity for higher productivity. Understanding service health, how available are my services, how well do my consumers think, they're operating, what does that service look like to them, right? From a CSAT perspective, kind of tracking some performance. What are the vulnerabilities? What's risk around those services? And what are my IPC, incident problem change stats associated with that, right? So that helps us with operational decision making. And then understanding service costs, right? I think sometimes this gets lost in the translation. Understanding service costs really is part of that value quotient, and having total cost of ownership and being able to make investment decisions is also a key part of that. So quickly, level setting on the common service data model. For those of you that are relatively new to this, right? When we talk about common services, it's really about, kind of that standard and shared set of kind of service related definitions, right, across the platform, that will allow us to kind of enable these capabilities and use that across the various capabilities of the platform, right? And the data model really is, again, just that, it's a model, right? So it's a, kind of prescriptive approach to enabling the data that supports these services. And this is very important, right? Because those of you that have been on the platform for a long time will know that we always didn't have a prescriptive model, and that left a lot of, kind of data in different tables and, kind of with different relationships. And as the platform matured, it became really, really important to get a prescriptive model so that the platform knows where to find data based on the use case, right? So again, just this idea that the CSDM, we're not implementing CSDM. CSDM is really enabler, and the value is really derived from the contextual data that it provides, right? So as we think about process automation, as we think about AI, as we think about some of these kind of enhanced platform capabilities, or even how our organization functions, that contextual data is really what drives the value. So the CSDM and CMDB, how does that work together? So this is a really great visual, right? So we've got core data, right? And this is data that you configure when you build your platform, right? So a lot of you will be familiar with this, right? I need to know, what are my company departments or my business units? What locations do I support? What contracts do I support, what users, right? And we typically have data feeds for this. Some of this might be manual, but we typically have data feeds for a lot of this. And then the infrastructure data, right, is, environmentally, what am I supporting, right? So I have, all of these, kind of traditional infrastructure, and a lot of this is discovered in today's world, right? You're either using ServiceNow Discovery or you're using some other kind of integration, or you're pulling data in from other systems, right? Whatever the source, these are more kind of automatically generated, or information that comes in through other sources, right? But when you get up into the kind of the blue area there, right? This is really what makes up the common service data model, right? And almost all of these are manual in the way that they're built, right? So when you start thinking about what kind of business services or what offerings am I going to develop, or what are my business applications and technical services and all that, and then the relationships between them, right? That's manually created stuff, right? So I just want to kind of set the expectation here. We're not discovering this stuff, we're creating this stuff, and that's what makes it kind of uniquely important to think through and design with the end in mind relative to how this data gets structured in the platform. So using the data model, what are the outcomes, right? So we kind of talked about why it's important, and being able to see that kind of view from the top down, bottom up, right? But really the problem that it solves is solving for disparate data, right? Disparate data. You're going to limit the platform capabilities if we don't follow the model, and if we don't have data that is going to support those high value use cases, right? So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those use cases as we go along, but really we're focused on how do we get data to support high value outcomes in the platform, right? Anything from rationalizing my applications to reducing the outages, or having reporting and visibility on what's going on in my world. Governance, risk, and compliance plays a part in that, right? Investment management all plays a part in how we leverage the data. All right, so quickly, a lot of you have probably seen this already. The way ServiceNow thinks about this is they break it down into these quadrants. There's the managed technical service quadrant, which is really kind of more of the operational side of the world. Like, what are the technical services that I need, right, to support my applications or my business services, right? And then there's a sell consume in the green. This is where we interact with our business constituency, or even we interact with our, kind of external clients in some cases, right? Up on the upper right-hand quadrant, this is they call this the design. This is really about where the enterprise architecture people live, and they're trying to understand what business capabilities do I need to support, what business applications are going to provide those business capabilities. Do I have any specific information needs that need to be kind of captured and managed from an architectural perspective. And then the new one, right, part of CSDM version 4, they've added this build component, and this is going to begin to be the place where they start managing across the life cycle, right? Managing build components and managing, kind of the whole life cycle of activities. Right now in San Diego, they've kind of started down this path, but this is by no means ready to go yet in terms of buildings out in production. So again, I just want to kind of highlight this idea that, typically when you start down the CSDM path, the pivot point in all of this are the application services, right? So understanding what application services make up my environment are really is really the, kind of the key piece of information, because everything else kind of ties into that, right? So if I understand, if I've got a business application and I've got, different environments that support that business application, I would start building out the common source data model, thinking about that, and then linking those that infrastructure to those application services, right? So that's typically when you think about core. What am I going to do first? That's typically where organizations start. So just to give you some thinking around that. Okay, so let's tie this back into service taxonomy, right? Because this is where there's a little bit of kind of nuance, and I want to kind of talk through this and make sure that there's a clear understanding of what the service taxonomy is and how this ties into the common service data model. So just a quick definition. Again, taxonomy is a science or technique of classification. And really with the service taxonomy, we're trying to classify services, right? So at the end of the day, this is about service classification, and then further, right, how do I classify those services using the common service data model on the ServiceNow platform? So different taxonomies, right? So kind of the first thing when you think about taxonomies is what lens are you looking through, right? And there's different ways of thinking about taxonomies, right? And here's some kind of traditional different lens to look at things, right? I'm going to walk through these just to give you a sense of how these differ depending on the viewpoint or depending on the lens that you're looking at, right? So and before I start, again, I want to, kind of be clear, right? When we talk about the common service data model, we also have this whole idea of applications and business applications, and they clearly intersect with the service taxonomy. So I'm not ignoring that. I'm just pushing that to the side for now because I want to focus on service taxonomies, right? So let's dig into service taxonomies a little bit. So the marketing catalog, right? So this is where we list our products and services. What does IT do? Who's doing it? Kind of the what, how, and then what capabilities and performance parameters are we supporting, right? This is not a service request catalog, right? This is really the list of services, and we typically organize it by the functional areas, right? Like shared services, IT services, and line of business services, right? So this is about what each one of those functional areas do, and some of the kind of key, I call it marketing information about why the services exist, how we do it, who does it, right? That kind of thing, right? And then where does this sit in the CSDM, right? So this information, when you start building out your common service data model, there's going to be areas to populate these definitions, right? And this information in the portfolio, in the services, and in the offering descriptions, right? So that's where this stuff is going to land. So then the line of business, right? So if I'm looking at this from a, kind of a business perspective, and like, what does my line of business provide? This is where that taxonomy starts, right? And the organization of those services, right, is going to depend largely on the business, right? So sales and marketing, uh, taxonomy is going to look different than manufacturing or whatever the line of business is. Typically in the common service data model, this is going to fit into your business services and offerings. The IT services, again, these are the products and services that the IT organization provides. And it also is going to, be how do I deliver these solutions and how do I also, support other end-to-end services, right? So this is where the taxonomy begins to get a little bit of complexity, right? Because these IT services are typically supporting applications, they're supporting business services, and how does that all work, right? But we'll get into that, right? So these should be tied to outcomes and deliverables, right? So this is not the marketing catalog. This is what am I doing? What is the outcome of what I'm doing, and what is the deliverables, right? And then this is typically, organized, kind of along functional teams, or it might have a different, a different flavor depending on the types of services that IT wants to deliver or is thinking about delivering back to the business, right? So this is traditionally going to be in your technical services and offerings in the common service data model. The service request catalog, right? So I know you're all familiar with this. This is going to be where we do our formal request processes, right? And these are typically going to be tied to some sort of a portal, right, with some automated workflow. And these services are going to be organized and aligned. Again, if I look at this from the lens of the consumer, it's like, how do I organize these so that it's easy to find and easy to navigate, right? So there's typically some sort of a portal, and then that portal is organized in a way that we can make sure that we've got good, kind of ease of use and intuitive navigation, right? That's the primary concern here. But when we tie it to the common service data model, these service offerings also get linked into that, those technical and business services, right? So in a sense, they reside in two different places, right? Enterprise shared services. Again, a lot of organizations, might have, their services organized to support, maybe, kind of shared services. And in this way, we might look at, I deliver network access back to the business, or email, or client computing, or, whatever is kind of shared across the entire organization. Those typically get, kind of organized in that manner, right? So the CSDM linkage here is, usually I see these in business services, but you can also make the case for these to be in technical services. IT operations. So this is really, thinking in terms of how do I manage, my events, my monitored systems, my infrastructure, my applications, right? All of that sort of thing, right? So the IT operations is organized and aligned to what I need to monitor and manage and get kind of operational visibility from a real-time perspective, right? What is my application health, my infrastructure health, my security, right? And from a CSDM perspective, there is linkage here with the application services. So application services can be, kind of tied back to this operational dashboard, and dynamic CI groups, right? If you remember seeing that on the CSDM model, dynamic CI groups can also be tied back to these operational dashboards. So if you think about, if I want to, manage a group of, Oracle databases, right? I can create a dynamic CI group for Oracle, and then I can kind of manage that as a, on my operational dashboard. Service cost and service cost models and TCO, right? So how do I begin to start understanding the cost of my service? Kind of goes back to the thinking around, if I'm really providing value back to the business for my services, cost is a big value driver, right? So understanding those costs is a key component of this, and looking at that through a cost lens. There's going to be, kind of an organization of that data, right, to supply, to kind of fit the financial models that, say, your CFO or your, kind of IT, financial manager is thinking about, right? So here we're thinking about, consumption of network, compute and storage, all of that, right? So that becomes really important as we start, kind of going down the value stream. So again, the CSDM linkage here is, you can leverage just about everything in the CSDM stack, right? So the good news is those are CIs. They can be found in tables. They have relationships, and we can kind of tie into that to support a cost model. Customer services, right? This is kind of those outward facing, services. This would be tied to CSM for those of you familiar with the CSM product. So these are going to be organizations of services that are going to be aligned to support my business customers. Think about like managed network services or something along those lines. The common service data model linkage here is going to be you're going to leverage services and offerings right in the common service data model, but you're also going to be tying that to sold products and services, right? So in a sense, those two work together. Okay, so we have another poll question. And in here, we want you just to check all that apply here, right? So, we just went through the service taxonomy and we've spent some time kind of, kind of thinking through the different types of lenses. So curious, where are you at on that journey, right? So, we might have some folks here that, have a, pretty good understanding of this, and they've, kind of gone through the process and started building out these taxonomy, and, maybe even start down the CSDM journey associated with that, right? Most of you have some sort of a request taxonomy, so that would be great. Some of you have already started down the marketing catalog, like what are my services, but you might be struggling to operationalize them, right? So that's usually the challenge, right? We kind of understand what we do, but we don't know how this fits into a common service data model with deliverables and outcomes, right? What we want to incorporate line of business services, again, another area of challenges that we see, right? Usually, there's some challenges of, kind of how do I name these things? What are they? Can I get, kind of support from, my business community to help me, get this off the ground? And then you just might have some struggle. You tried to build some of this stuff out, and you're just trying to, just struggling making it all fit together, right? So these are just kind of common problems that we see, and again, curious where everyone's at here on the call.
So Dan, why don't we go ahead and work on closing out that poll here while we're waiting on the results? I do have a question that came in, if you don't mind,
Okay.
while we're waiting on that poll to come back here. So the question is, we have business services configured in our CMDB to support incident, problem, and change management. How important is it to build out the rest of the CSDM?
Yeah, we see that we've seen it a few times, right? As we've working with clients, and usually that can work. But business services in the common service data model, you're going to be on an island, right? And you're not going to be, you're not going to be, kind of aligned to how that should work in the platform, right? So, doing business services and using those for let's say routing tickets or something along those lines, that is going to be problematic long term, right? So we have to kind of pull that. I would, there's nothing wrong with leaving it there kind of short term, but as you start thinking about realigning to support the, kind of the more standard, that whole idea of where incident, problem, change, and how those tickets interact with the common service data model, that usually starts at the application service level, right? So those are, that's where the environments touch the common service data model, right? So if you think about it, every application service has some sort of an environment tied to it, and those incidents have to be tied to those and changes, right? Get tied to those environments, so I understand impacts at the environmental level, right? Okay,
Excellent.
so
Okay, we got our poll results here. Dale, if you'd like to go through those.
looks like roughly 50% we have a service request taxonomy. That's not surprising. That's where a lot of organizations start down this, kind of service taxonomy journey. And it's interesting, I'm seeing, the other one is we have attempted to build this out and we're struggling, right? So a lot of people fall in that category, and then it seems like the rest of these are kind of evenly distributed, right? So we've got we've got people that understand this pretty well and they're kind of moving down the path, and we've got organizations, kind of focusing on the marketing catalog and how do I operationalize them, and then the whole line of business service thing, right? So interesting results. So very good. Thank you very much for responding to that. Okay, so design with the end in mind, right? So I want to kind of, again, when we think about design, right, there has to be some guiding principles. Like, what are my design guiding principles here? So, and I come with an architectural background, so I kind of want to get this out so that we, kind of a framework of understanding of when we talk about design with the end in mind, what does that really mean? So, let's get started with that, right? So, the first guiding principle here is a well-managed CMDB is the starting place for CSDM enablement, right? Talk to a lot of clients that are trying to go down this common service data model approach. And the first question that I like to ask is, where are you at on your CMDB journey, right? How are you with your foundation data? How are you doing with infrastructure and kind of the, the blocking and tackling of CMDB and keeping it accurate and complete, right? It really is important to have that, nailed down, recognizing that CMDBs are never perfect. They're never, 100% accurate, 100% complete, but they need to be managed, and we need to, have those foundational capabilities to get the full value. Again, we talked about this a little earlier, right? But a guiding principle here is, we've got to have a strategic vision of where we want to go, right? So just starting to go down the CSDM and building services and kind of the applications and all that. If we don't really have a vision for where we want to go with that, or where do we think we're going to get value as an organization, we're going to struggle to really get kind of true traction, right? So, establishing that vision and understanding the use cases is really the beginning of the journey, right? So, and this is really about, am I focused on, kind of the operational visibility? Like, I want to understand how, my infrastructure is aligned to my application environments, and or am I looking for investment information, right? I want to be able to make good investment decisions about what services we're providing, what those services cost, and how am I impacting organizational outcomes, right? Those are two very different, kind of focus areas. And what we're finding is organizations that have a service-oriented operating model, and by that I mean we're thinking about how do we engage the business with services, they're going to be best positioned to get intended value, right? Because there's work that goes into building this out, understanding what the taxonomy can be, and then kind of managing the care and feeding of all this work, right? So there's an investment there, right? And what we're finding is organizations that are service oriented or think about services or moving down that path are going to get the best value, right? So this is really, again, this is a broader view of service management. This goes beyond the ITIL process areas. This gets into what services am I delivering? How do I deliver, right? And it's going to include the idea of now I've got services, I'm going to have owners, I'm going to have managers, I'm going to have architects that understand how these services are put together and how to get the best value, right? The other one here, designing a CSDM taxonomy requires broad organizational participation, right? So, I mean, this is kind of intuitive, right? But, IT, especially when you're talking about line of business services, it's really hard to build these services in a vacuum. We've got to have outside in thinking. By that, I mean, we've got to include the voice of the customer, and we've got to engage those organizations that are going to engage us, right, in services. CSDM success includes includes design and alignment of data management and configuration management, right? So this is the whole idea of if I'm going to do and add all of this, kind of additional data, right? I'm going to support these relationships and build out this model, right? I've got to update my practices to support that, right? Again, there's a lot of manual data here, and I've got to manage it. Incorporating service taxonomy is going to require orchestration with ITSM governance. So if you think about this again intuitively, I'm now incorporating services as part of the data that I support, right? So I've got to manage that, and I've got a little bit more information on this, but if I'm managing services, I've got to incorporate and now orchestrate service management governance with my platform and data governance.
Hey, Dale, do you mind if I jump in with a couple of questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Absolutely. Is the line of business the same as the business capability map model?
So the business capabilities, again, that's an enterprise architecture function. So the enterprise architecture is going to say what capabilities do we need to support the businesses that we're engaged in, right? And they usually line that up by, now I've got a set of applications that support those business capabilities, and they manage that portfolio to make sure that they've got good kind of coverage of those capabilities from a, kind of from a application perspective, and that they're rationalizing that portfolio to, to get the best, cost and value, right?
Excellent.
Yeah.
One more question before you get going again, and I apologize, but we've got some great ones here. How would you best describe the difference between business applications versus software? And the same person says they go on to say they find it challenging to present a clear definition.
Yeah, so if you look at the CSDM definitions, I don't have it right in front of me here, right? But really the business application is how the business would think about that particular application, like what function is it providing, right? Like you might have a business application, called, financial reporting or something like that. You might have 3 or 4 applications that support financial reporting, right? So that then would be your business app, right? And then you might have different environments or even different software that supports financial reporting, right? So it's kind of a higher level view. It's the business view of an application. It's not necessarily a definition of the software that's running. Now, sometimes the software, can be pretty closely aligned with how it's named, right? But the software is different than the actual business app and the way we name it.
Okay. I've got one more question. We might as well knock it out here. What if we're looking at non-IT services, business service and offerings that we want to track deliverables, mapping to people and process? Deliverables would be document creation, research results, training, travel, etc. They use CSM for that for non-IT departments, and our customers are all internal. So,
Yeah, I've seen some use cases like that, right, where you can use CSM for, let's call it shared services, right? Some of that kind of internal stuff. I don't think it's necessarily a wrong thing. I think it's just going to depend on the circumstances of the organization.
okay, we've got a few more, but we'll come back to those questions because I want to make sure you get, find your mojo here and get back into it.
Okay, so the last one here, guiding principles, right? Services must be defined and managed, right? So, again, goes without saying, right? But if we don't have, offerings that include outcomes and deliverables, we're going to quickly get in trouble, right? So when we're designing our taxonomies and we're thinking about our services, we have to describe what we're delivering, not what we do, right? And the example here is, we all, every organization provides network services. That's what we do, but it's not network services that we're delivering. We're providing network access, for example, right? And access has, specific deliverables like what kind of access, how much bandwidth, what's the availability, what's the performance, what's the SLAs around network access, right? So that's where we have to kind of think about the difference in how to manage this, right? And then again, I want to bring up this cost thing again because I'm, very passionate about that. Because again, if we're talking about service value, if we don't think about costs and cost visibility, we're going to struggle to show value long term, right? So enough said on that. All right, so modeling your data, right? So a little bit of guidance on this, right? So again, the data modeling is about, how do we classify our services? How do we actually take this taxonomy and kind of fit it in to the common service data model, right? It provides that context and, provides that, kind of layers of what fits in the portfolio, what fits in services, what fits in offerings, right? And then what are the dependencies, right? So here's service portfolio. So those of you familiar with ServiceNow, it has a service portfolio function. And in the service portfolio, you've got, this idea of portfolios, which is really the highest level. And then you've got, kind of the underlying tiers and nodes that, kind of tie back up to the portfolios. And then the tiers and nodes tie back to services, right? And then the services have at least one offering, right? You have to have at least one offering. And then the offerings are where we're defining metrics, we're defining commitments, we're defining availability, what's the scope, what's the pricing, all of that, right? So, a quick example here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but again, this is, kind of a quick view. Here's the tier, right? The portfolio is the top, the IT service portfolio, tiers, we might have software support versus network support, categories, right? And then underlying services and underlying offerings, right? This is kind of, again, very high level, just to demonstrate how this kind of breaks down into the various components, right? Naming, again, doing naming of service, just like we had the conversation about business applications, having good names and being careful about how you name is important, right? We have to identify services that are that resonate with our users, right? If I've got an IT service that makes no sense to the people that are going to use it, then we don't have a good name, right? So, and if we don't have a service that's not defined into what outcomes or what deliverables we have, again, it's going to be we're going to have a difficult time, kind of building that out or making that work in the platform. There's a note here about being technology agnostic. Again, we're providing email and calendaring, and how we do it, the underlying environments and the underlying technology can be different, and that can be, kind of swapped out as we change those environments, but the service remains the same, right? And we have to have at least one offering, right? We can't publish in the ServiceNow. We can't publish without an offering being tied to a service. Here's an example of some service types. I'm not going to spend going through each one of these, but the point is there's different ways to construct this, and there's different ways to think about services and offerings, and it's really going to depend on your organization and how you want to, kind of engage your constituency, right? There's different views, different ways of doing this. There's really no, like hard and fast, you got to do it this way. The best way to do it is the best way that meets the needs of your organization and that your clients understand what you're delivering and they understand the value, right? That's really what it's about. Some data modeling tools, again, just, my take is, look, let's build this out in, kind of a paper-based approach before we try to spend a lot of time kind of configuring stuff in the platform. I would first, build a lexicon and then build a diagram and work through some scenarios to get an understanding. And once you've got that kind of built out and you're comfortable with that approach, that can, you can begin, kind of building up based on that, right? And in fact, you can, go through that exercise and, you can actually model this out and, put it in a spreadsheet, and you could even do a mass import, right? Once you kind of get comfortable with this and you know what you want to put in here, there's ways to mass import this. So let's look at something in action here, right? So I'm going to use an example here. This is high availability storage, right? So we've built out the technical services, right? Storage is the technical service. I've got, two offerings here. I've got standard availability and high availability storage. I've got dynamic CI groups. In other words, I've organized the CIs that are associated with this high availability service. And then I've tied that back to this high availability offering. I've got a business application that is using high availability storage, and I've got a service offering that's using high availability storage, right? So when you think about the life cycle of this, the first thing that's going to happen, right? So you think about this use case, right? So the service owner is saying to the application manager, hey, we want to add 1,000 users next quarter, right? The application manager looks at the business app and their environment, and they understand the environment because we've built this all and they know exactly what's where, right? They can say, oh, you know what? I don't have enough high availability storage, right? I'm kind of at the end of what's available, and I have to add some storage, right? So then a high availability storage request goes in, right? from the application manager. The storage owner gets alerted. And then we have some approvals, right? So the application owner approves this, the service owner approves it. There might be others in your organization, but for the purposes of example here, those two for sure would be engaged, right? So they're going to approve this storage request. And then the storage engineering and the storage owner then would be alerted, hey, we've got the approvals, this is on the way. And we, change request gets put in, right? So now I'm going to engage the application manager, the storage engineering team, infrastructure operations team, so they can be engaged and understand what's the impact, right? We've got a change ticket in, and that change ticket is going to be associated with all of the components associated with this request, right? And again, the good news is all that is available, and that information is available through the common service data model and CMDB, right? Here on this change request, we're going to alert the service manager that that's in progress. And then we're going to start configuring, right? So we're going to assign those configuration tasks, right? I mean, obviously we're going to wait based on the change plans, right? But we're going to have configuration tasks at the application service level. We're going to have it at the storage level, and most likely at the infrastructure engineering level, right? And then we're gonna go into we're gonna have some production readiness tasks, right? So we're going to have all the support teams, right, getting ready for the addition of this new high availability storage in the in the infrastructure in our environments, right? And then obviously we're alerting the managers and the owners that would be impacted by this. And then the storage and production, right? So once we go into production, we're going to alert, the entire team, hey, this is now in production, right? Service owner knows this is in production, and everybody's good to go, right? Well, actually, if we're doing cost, right, the story's not over, right? Because if I'm doing cost management and I'm measuring this service, right, based on what's being consumed, this service is now effectively consuming additional high availability storage, right? And I bring this use case up because we see this quite often. Like, how do I help organizations understand what it really costs to do storage, and how do I, kind of build a consumption-based model? So, this is not an uncommon use case. So what's changing here from a cost perspective, right? I've got that my storage cost pool has changed, right? I've added additional costs because I've added additional high availability components to my CI group, right? I've got to change the infrastructure environment, so cost there has changed. I've changed the production environment to support that application service associated with that business application. I've got to increase my service cost based on the storage now, the consumption of that storage for this particular service, and my application TCO goes up, right? Because I'm also I've got more costs associated with running this application. So this is how you run IT like a business, right? We know what costs and what's changing, and we know how that's impacting the end users and the service offerings. Okay, so one last component here, right? So how do we manage this stuff? How do we, manage our environments? Typical CMDB management, right? We have, policies, and we got reconciliation rules, and we've got discovery patterns, and we've got dashboards and exception reporting and all that, right? And we've got data coming in from, numerous sources usually, and we've got your traditional CMDB analysts and managers and practice owners, right? The platform architect and platform owner are going to be engaged in this type of activity, right? My data source owners and asset owners, right? They participate, right, in a well-managed CMDB. But now I'm going to add common service data model, right? I'm going to add application and business context, right, to this, and layer that on top of the CMDB, all the stuff we've just been talking about, right? Well, now I've got additional stakeholders, right, that have to participate in this whole ecosystem, right? I've got application owners, service owners, Enterprise architecture is going to be engaged. If you're doing any sort of cost management, the IT financial owners are going to be engaged. Now I've got to manage demand and applications as they're coming into my uh, CMDB and my and my common service data model, right? So I've got to have a registration process. What's the business application? What's the application services? How does that interact with the the business services, the technical services, so on and so forth, right? And now I've got to manage the updates across the life cycle of those activities, right? So what I've introduced now is I've got to have application managers that are participating in this. I've got to have a service architect, like how does this service fit into the common service data model? And I've got service managers who are making sure that as the services are changing, as we're adding offerings, changing offerings, that the service manager is participating, right? So that's that's a fairly significant kind of a stakeholder group, and the reality is you can do this informally, but you really have to formalize this stuff, right? As you add this complexity, a lot of the things that you may have been doing informally in the past are just going to require more formal process, more formal structure, because this is just going to get too complicated to manage effectively, right? So we've got to put governance in place. We've got to kind of formalize some of these activities to make sure that we can manage the entire ecosystem. So keys to success, and I'm sorry we're running a little bit late. I'm going to run through this really quickly. Understand the service vision, right? We talked about this. Are you trying to move towards a service-oriented operating model, or are you just focused on operational dependencies and visibility? Those are two different use cases. After you configure your business apps and app services, which is where we would recommend you start, look at the IT, the technical services, or the IT services. Consider those interactions with the different taxonomy views. Mock up the taxonomy using that lexicon and diagrams, model it out, and connect it up, right? Make sure that you're getting infrastructure connections to get, to show the real benefits. Like I want to make sure that I understand the environment and how this taxonomy connects to the underlying infrastructure. Make sure your process and governance is tuned. And create stakeholder groups, right? Get some momentum on this. Get some, get some momentum, some excitement. Showcase what you've done, and then always consider how the organization is going to use this data. What's in it for them, right? Because if you can demonstrate what's in it for them, it's going to be much easier to move down this path. So with that,
Yep.
Q&A.
Got a couple of questions to fire at you here. I think there's some asked to kind of show an example of the difference between business applications and business capabilities. I think we're having a little confusion there.
Business applications and business capabilities.
Yep.
Yeah, so a business capability might be, I need to do financial management in my organization, right? And I might have a whole portfolio of applications that support financial management, right? The CFO is going to have how am I managing P&L? How am I managing the expenses? How am I managing all of the things that go into managing financials for an organization, right? So the capability is financial management, and then you could even break it down further, right? But and then I've got business applications that support those business capabilities, and then a business application is going to have instances of applications that sit in the environment that actually provide kind of real live, this is how an application that supports financial management in my environment, right?
Cool. How about a taxonomy chart like that with the CI class names? Do you have one of those?
Taxonomy, say that again.
Yeah, do you have a taxonomy chart like that with the CI class names and the
Yes,
appropriate
yes,
CI
yeah,
relationships?
that's available in I think that's widely available, but if not, we can get it out, right?
Cool. And then let's see. Lastly, let's see. Make sure I covered all of these. Nope, that's the same one. Looks like we've covered them all. So it looks like we're doing good there. I think unless somebody wants to put in a last second question here, I think we've answered all of them that are out there. I would like to say at the end of this call there is a brief survey. If you would please take the time to do that survey, that definitely helps us improve our educational series, and we take those suggestions very seriously and read through all of them. So if you would please give us a survey and let us know how we're doing. And one last check. It looks like we do not have any more questions. So it looks like we're good. Dale, thank you so much for your time. Great job
Hey,
as always. So
yeah, hey, thanks. Appreciate it. Reach out to us, right? If you've got additional questions or
yep,
you want help with that business capability business app thing,
that's
we
right.
can,
Reach out to your CDW seller, reach out to your
yeah.
ServiceNow Solutions AE. We're here to help. Love to set up some time and you can have some one-on-one time with Dale. So give us that call. And one last time, thank you everybody for your time and have a great rest of your afternoons.